The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or widely known as SDGs, are goals set by world leaders in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Committed to a shared vision of a world free of poverty, a planet that is protected, and its people at peace, 193 governments came together to agree on 17 goals addressing 17 major world issues to tackle. Among the first issue flagged was poverty. According to the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, poverty is not only deprivation of economic or material resources, but a violation of human dignity too. Poverty's assault on human rights is cruel. It erodes economic and social rights such as the right to proper health care, adequate food and shelter, safe water, and the right to education. Hence, ending poverty in all its forms is the foundation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Eradicating poverty in all its forms remains as one of the greatest challenges faced by humanity. While the number of people living in extreme poverty dropped by more than half between the year 1990 and 2015, too many are still struggling for the most basic human needs. As of 2015, about 736 million people are still living on less than $1.90 a day. Many lack food, clean drinking water, and sanitation. Though rapid growth in countries such as China and India is seen to have lifted millions out of poverty, the progress has been uneven and acceleration is needed in many areas. According to the Multidimensional Poverty Index, 1.3 billion people around the globe has been robbed of the capability to live with dignity, deprived of access to proper health care, education, and living standards. In regions like South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, 80% of its people are forced to live in extreme poverty. New threats brought on by climate change, conflict, and food insecurity mean that even more work is needed to bring people out of the vicious cycle of poverty. As part of the commitment, 7 targets and 14 indicators were crafted to create action to end poverty in all its forms. As comprehensive and convincing as the targets sound, the world is yet to achieve its global goals as envisioned. However, there were progress. there was a decline in global extreme poverty, just at a slower pace than expected. It was projected that 6% of the global population would still be living in extreme poverty in 2030, which would mean the inability to achieve the target of ending poverty. Having said that, something was still better than nothing. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals tagline is "Leaving No One Behind." Ironically, the COVID-19 virus shares a similar pledge of leaving no one unaffected. Being suddenly hit by an unprepared-for outbreak, the global community finds itself facing unprecedented challenges, reversing whatever efforts that has been put forth to closing the gaps to eradicate poverty for the last 5 years. The pandemic is estimated to push more than 71 million people into extreme poverty in year 2020 itself. The World Food Programme estimates that more than 265 million people are to face acute food insecurity in 2020. The International Labour Organization predicts that the pandemic will trigger a 60% decline in earnings for 1.6 billion informal workers, while half of the world is trying to survive without any form of social protection. The World Bank estimates that we will see the first rise in poverty since 1998. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, estimates that human development will decline since we first began measuring it in 1990. The new extreme poor will be concentrated in regions already struggling with the high burden of poverty, such as South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Back home, in an attempt to contain the COVID-19 outbreak, Malaysia announced its strict movement control order sometime around mid-March. As a consequence, jobs, travels, learning, tourism all came to an abrupt halt, shocking the economic core of the nation, leaving its people baffled by what has suddenly hit them. Following the COVID-19 outbreak and movement control order implementation, the unemployment rate in Malaysia hits a 27-year high. The Merdeka Centre claims that 5 to 8% more Malaysians will plunge into poverty as a result of this pandemic. The crisis also led to youth unemployment rates rising higher and rapidly compared to overall unemployment, as young workers tend to work in part-time, temporary or informal work, often in the services-related sectors, was anticipated to hit the hardest by the ongoing crisis. Preliminary data released by the Department of Statistics indicated that the imposition of the MCO has impacted a number of sectors. Based on past patterns, it can be expected that youth unemployment rates will rise sharply beyond past levels to new highs of between 15 to 25% depending on the age cohort.
Kementerian Kewangan akan memulakan pembayaran bantuan prihatin nasional BPN berjumlah 10 juta ringgit seperti yang diumumkan menerusi pakej rangsangan ekonomi prihatin rakyat.
In March 2020, the Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin announced the 2020 Prihatin Rakyat Economic Stimulus Package to ensure the economic risks associated with the COVID-19 pandemic is effectively addressed and that the Malaysian economy remains on a strong footing. As of September 2020, the Malaysian government announced the implementation of several initiatives and additional assistance under the 10 billion ringgit Prihatin Supplementary Initiative Package, Kita Prihatin, in line with its efforts to boost economic recovery. This proposed additional package would include 7 billion ringgit Bantuan Prihatin Nasional 2.0 for the welfare of the people, 2.4 billion ringgit Wage Subsidy Program 2.0 to support struggling employers and employees, and a 600 million ringgit Prihatin Special Grant. The recently announced Budget 2021 also addresses strategies towards the pandemic recovery, focusing its expenditure on not just attending to the healthcare aspects of it, but also the efforts to get its people back on their feet through employment incentives. To name a few attempts of the government reducing financial burdens of its people and to pump in the cash into the nation's economy, its plan is to raise the ceiling for the COVID-19 fund from 20 billion ringgit to 65 billion ringgit to fund the Kita Prihatin Supplementary Assistance Package. Employees' minimum EPF contribution is to be reduced to 9% starting January 2021. The government has also announced a targeted EPF Account 1 withdrawal facility of 500 ringgit per month up to 6,000 for 12 months. Total withdrawal from EPF Account 1 will be 4 billion ringgit. Apart from handouts given by the federal government to provide sufficient fiscal aids, what else has been or can be done to prepare the nation and its people to face the change the pandemic has brought? Embracing science, technology, and innovation is agreeably one of the most important measures to recover from the setback and put the nation back on track to achieving its goals of eradicating poverty. A National Economic Recovery Plan, locally known as Penaja HRDF Initiative, has been introduced to empower the people of Malaysia with 21st century skills and propel businesses through the endorsement of entrepreneurship, ultimately stimulating the slumping economy. This training incentive program highlights how generating job opportunities and trainings play a critical part in Malaysia's fight to get back on its feet in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic-led unemployment and employability issues. This initiative focuses primarily on reskilling and upskilling Malaysians in the B40 category, which represents the low-income earners in the bottom 40%, with current digital skills, entrepreneurship skills, and many more market-driven Industrial Revolution 4.0 trainings. These efforts will help create dynamic, local high-skilled labour markets to support areas with high job potential and introducing greater flexibility to help school leavers, unemployed graduates, and retrenched workers get into the workforce. Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, efforts to promote access and delivery of health technologies are undeniably crucial. Modeling our fellow Asian country neighbours, Indonesia and India, through the South-South exchange of innovative technology, knowledge and solutions, vaccines could be made accessible to all affected regions regardless of city or rural areas, the rich or the poor. Among other efforts that could be adopted by the local and international governments in involving science, technology and innovation to end poverty includes the usage of information communication technology, ICT, to improve agricultural livelihoods, education quality, healthcare accessibility, and economic development. In a nutshell, Poverty is a serious violation of human rights. The world, now more than ever, needs to rethink, realign, and re-engage with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda to put an end to this nightmare.